Hello, Tech fans, and welcome into episode 157 of the Tech Sideline Podcast, originating from TSL's high-tech studios in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. On today's show, we break down what happened on Monday night inside of Castle Coliseum as Penn State beat number 15 Virginia Tech 75-55 in men's basketball. Hokies suffered its first loss of the season, and we'll spend the majority of our time previewing the Commonwealth Clash that'll take place on Saturday between Virginia and Virginia Tech. Episode 157 of the Tech Sideline Podcast gets started right now. Whether you are watching live or archived on YouTube, listening on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or on Stitcher, folks, that's nearly 10 different ways you can consume the Tech Sideline Podcast. So glad you could join us today as we record on Thursday afternoon, December 10th. Our crew, as always, we have our managing editor, Chris Coleman, to my left. Across from me, our founder and general manager, Will Stewart. We were talking about it in between the open. Yes, he is the best podcast producer in the land, as Will shakes his head about his son. He is Malcolm Stewart behind the scenes, and I'm your podcast host, Evan Hughes. For those that are watching live on YouTube, we thank you for being with us. Please be sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and if you have a question for Will or Chris, basketball or football related, go ahead and throw it in the chat now, and we will get to them at the end of the show. Campus Emporium is proud to sponsor the TSL community. A portion of every sale is returned to Virginia Tech in support of its endowment for excellence, student programming, and need-based scholarships. We have been serving the Virginia Tech community for over 25 years from our locations in Blacksburg and our online store. Please visit the number one source for Virginia Tech merchandise at campusemporium.com or come see us at 207 North Main Street or 1337 South Main Street. The Tech Sideline Podcast is also presented by the Southeast Regional Training Center. Go to southeastrtc.com today to find out how you can support Virginia Tech Wrestling. They get their season started in a little under a month. Gentlemen, it's great to be back with you. We've got so much planned for the podcast today. We're going to talk a little hoops. We're going to talk a lot about the Who's and the Hokies. Chris Coleman, it's crossover season, so how are you holding up?
Not so good this week.
Hanging in there.
It's been a rough one. It's not been fun.
Will, how are you? This is a big week.
I'm tired, man. It's the end of football season, and I'm all worn out. And football season's actually going longer than usual.
Well, we have a great show planned for today. Excited to talk a little bit of hoops at the beginning, and then we will spend the majority of our time previewing Virginia Tech and Virginia. So on Monday, we got to start with some Hokie hoops because Virginia Tech, ranked 15th in the country, went into the ACC Big Ten Challenge against Penn State, a team they have seen often in the ACC Big Ten Challenge over the last couple of years. And the Nittany Lions handed Virginia Tech its first loss of the season. Hokies fell behind 17-0 to start the game.
No, Tech made a three-pointer.
Tech was up 17, or Tech was up 3-0. Wabisa Beatty. I can't talk today. Wabisa Beatty started and ended the game with a three-pointer.
Oh, gosh.
Yep.
That's why he's the expert. My apologies, folks. Hokies turned the ball over 14 times and made just 6 threes. Chris, let me start with you. 75-55, the final score. How concerned are you after the 20-point loss?
I'm no more concerned than I was elated after
the Villanova
win.
Yeah.
But I was happy Tech beat Villanova, but just because Tech beat Villanova doesn't mean there's some sort of Sweet 16 Elite 8 team. And likewise, losing to Penn State doesn't mean that they're not, because they lost to Penn State 2 years ago. A much worse Penn State team, by the way, 2 years ago. That team went 14-18. This is a much better Penn State team than that. They still made the Sweet 16 when they lost to that Penn State team. I didn't like it, though, because it's Penn State, man.
I just hate losing to Penn State in basketball.
Chris said it on Monday. He really wanted this game.
Honestly, it was demoralizing.
So my wife is a Penn State grad, mid 80s. shouldn't care about Penn State basketball. Nobody from that era cares about Penn State.
Care.
Nobody from this era cares about Penn State basketball. She actually apologized after the game. She's like, I'm sorry, because Penn State beat Virginia Tech.
So to me, the game was about two different things. Number one, Penn State plays a very physical brand of basketball, as the entire Big Ten does, basically.
Yeah.
Mike Young said on Tech Talk Live on Monday night
before the game,
he said something like, they're going to foul us about 150 times and the refs are going to call 20 of them, so we got to be strong with the ball and ready for that. So he warned the team exactly what they were getting into from a physicality standpoint. Apparently the team did not believe him, and they found out the hard way. So that's point number one. Point number two is Mike Young's, I'm no basketball X's and O's guru, so please don't ask me to go into detail on this, anybody. But Mike Young's offensive system is very, very complicated. I'll liken it to the RPO game in football. Like on any given play, a quarterback could have three different options. He could hand it off to the running back, he could keep it himself, or he could throw that slant to the wide receiver, depending on what the defensive end does, depending on what the linebacker does, and all that. Mike Young's offense is kind of the same way. Like, any given play can branch into several different things depending on how the defense plays you, depending on how they guard ball screens and things like that. It's very, very complicated, and it's not something that gets picked up right away. Well, Virginia Tech, although this is the issue with taking so many transfers, right?
Right.
Like, Cartier Jada, I've actually heard he hates being called Cartier. They prefers Cardi, so I'll call him
Cardi Jada.
Cartier Jada. It's almost like he has to unlearn everything he learned 3 years at Kansas State to play in this system, right? Same thing for Pimsel and guys like that. And even Tech's most experienced player in this system is Aluma, of course. But then even their second most experienced players are just in their second year in the system. So Mike Young hire is a long-term hire. And we will hit our peak of efficiency when we have lots of players on the team with multiple years of experience in the system. And so we're not there yet, and we're not going to be. There's going to be some ugly games like that this year. There will be some more good games too, and I'm not saying Tech's not going to go to the NCAA tournament. I don't know if they are or not. We'll find out. Shoot, at this point, why are we even bringing the subject matter up?
Right.
We don't even know if Virginia Tech's going to play Clemson or not, for goodness sake. You never know who's going to get COVID for either team, right? All these programs a bunch of programs are getting shut down.
See, it's funny because the basketball team hadn't been affected yet, and the football team hadn't been affected in weeks, maybe a couple of months.
Right. Yeah.
So in our little bubble, we've kind of forgotten that it's a thing,
right?
And yet football games all over the place are being postponed and canceled. Basketball games are being postponed and canceled.
I'm telling you, at some point this year, you're going to wake up in the morning, you're going to check the news, and you're going to see that the Virginia Tech basketball game is canceled.
Yeah. And
I don't know whether that's going to be because of Virginia Tech positive cases or the other team's positive cases or what.
Yeah.
But it's going to happen. So pardon me if I'm not looking off way into the distant future about NCAA tournaments or whatever. And what is even going to happen in the NCAA tournament? When you get to the NCAA tournament, and let's say Virginia Tech goes to the NCAA tournament and they make the second round and they're about to play and everybody does their testing and Tech's got too many positives and they have to shut down. Well, you can't pause the whole NCAA tournament for a week to 10 days, right?
Interesting stuff.
So does Tech have to forfeit? It would seem in a tournament situation, it would seem like that's the only possible solution, right? So I'm just going to take it one at a time.
One game at a time.
Yeah.
Going back to the Penn State game, Will, Nittany Lions made 12 threes. Isaiah Brockington dropped 24 points. Did you feel like Penn State played really well or Virginia Tech played poorly?
I put it on Virginia Tech. I think if the Hokies had been more aggressive from the beginning, and I don't even know what I mean by that. I just know that Seth Greenberg used to say, Virginia Tech would go out and they'd lose a basketball game, and Seth after the game would say, "We just weren't strong with the ball."
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, what the hell is he talking about? Really, Seth? Come on, give me some X's and O's.
Mm-hmm.
Don't give me that. But I'm a convert. You have to be aggressive. Your passes have to be sharp. Your movement has to be sharp. That's what Seth was saying, was you got to be in your groove and moving the ball and pushing hard. And the Hokies just didn't do that.
You have to maintain control of the basketball through contact, right?
I know, and not, don't be moving away from the pass as it's coming to you, all that sort of stuff. And if Virginia Tech had started the game more aggressive and stronger with the ball and just had that old thing of they punched us in the mouth and we didn't punch back. If Virginia Tech had punched back, I think this would have been a different game. This stuff runs on emotion and players get in a groove, and Virginia Tech made it easy for Penn State to get in that groove. If you look at that game, a lot of Penn State shots they were wide open. They were in rhythm.
They shot really well.
Yeah, everybody's
really well.
talking about Virginia Tech's offense and how it struggled, but the defense struggled too. Struggled a lot to defend the ball, to defend the paint. Penn State was going in and dishing out and getting open threes, and I think if you just play a better game, they're not in that kind of rhythm.
Now Virginia Tech, 3 home games have been their 3 worst games, and their 2 best games have been on neutral courts. Yeah. Duke got bombed by Illinois at home the other night, right? That game was at Duke, right?
Correct. They lost to Michigan State at home as well.
Right. So I don't know. I think maybe teams that have good home court atmospheres maybe are going to struggle some at home this year.
I just, for some reason, and maybe this is just my own personal bias, and there's really no reason for it, I actually think that's a bigger factor in basketball than I have in football.
I agree.
Yeah, and I don't know why that is.
I definitely think basketball is just very intimate.
Yeah, people are so right on top of it.
Yeah. Speaking of Duke, how about Coach K?
So what's going on there? He got
busted hard on Twitter the other day. Somebody pulled up a headline from the spring or summer, and where Coach K was like, "We absolutely have to play the NCAA tournament this year. We can't afford to miss 2 NCAA tournaments in a row." And now that they're losing and getting bombed at home, he comes out right after the game and says, "I don't think we should be playing right now because of COVID." Right? I bet he doesn't make that statement if they had won the game by 20.
I have a belief that at some point in time we are all hypocrites.
Absolutely.
We all contradict ourselves. And when you're called out on it, it's kind of embarrassing.
I think it's why some people, they just don't communicate much. The more you say, the more likely you are to say something stupid. Right?
I know it.
So, duly noted as somebody who likes to talk a lot. We're recapping Penn State 75.
Take that with you as you go through your career.
Penn State 75-55 win over number 15 Virginia Tech on Tuesday. Final thought before we transition to talk about football. Hokies struggled to shoot the 3 ball against VMI last week. Hokies had to, it was a competitive second half. They pulled away in the end to beat VMI. They shoot 6 of 22 from deep in the loss to Penn State.
Over the last 2 games, they are 10 of 49.
If the Hokies don't make threes, what's the ceiling of this team? And are they a team still, even though with added depth, are they a team that lives and dies by the 3 ball?
Well, you said the last 2 games they're 10 of 49?
Last 2 games, 10 of 49.
Well, they shouldn't be averaging 25 3-point attempts per game.
Yeah, they were 4 of 27 and 6 of 22.
So to me, that
they're not even initiating the offense.
To me, that screams we're really having trouble running the offense.
Right.
Like we can't. So I don't think that's an ideal number. That was an ideal number of 3-point attempts last year.
I'm not sure Mike Young was even running his offense last year. He just
No, he was running certain pieces
doing
of
something
it,
different.
But yeah, the parts of it that required anybody taller than 6'6", he couldn't run.
and as he said, I don't like playing that way.
Yeah.
So he went out and got a bunch of tall guys for his roster.
Right. So there's lots of pieces of the offense that are just getting implemented this year, because they couldn't be implemented last year because Tech didn't have any size.
Yeah.
Long-term process.
Last year was year 0. This is year 1. Kind of the way to look at it.
I'll add a quick final thought. No John Ogiaco on Tuesday due to an injury. He has yet to appear this year.
End of
Mike
December?
Young, I'd always heard that it was his hamstring, but apparently it was his knee.
Yeah.
He had had a little arthroscopic
Meniscus.
surgery, and Mike Young is hopeful they'll have him back by the Miami game.
Okay.
So is he someone you could see? We talked about in previous podcasts how much depth Virginia Tech has this year. What kind of role do you see Ogiaco playing on this team?
I don't know. It's going to be tough to come in right in the middle of the ACC schedule when you've missed so much time, especially when you've already got 2 players who can play the 5.
I just don't see his return making a lot of difference in this team.
I think. I mean, having 13 scholarship players is great because it gives you a lot of lineup options and everything, but doesn't mean you need to be playing 13 guys because that's gonna mess up your rotation. Would you rather do you really want to take Kevy Aluma out of the game just for the sake of getting Ogiaco 5 or 10 minutes?
Right. Aluma is a 30-minute a night guy.
Yeah. So, and Aluma can play the 4 and Ogiaco can play the 5, whatever. Yes, I do think he'll have a role to a certain extent, maybe in some matchups. Probably more so against a Florida State than some other teams on the roster. But yeah, it's a different problem for Virginia Tech basketball.
Yeah.
The old problem was we didn't have enough players at all, and there's no such thing as too many players, but if you do make the mistake of trying to make your rotation too big, it does hurt cohesiveness. I've always said, give me 8 to 9 guys as part of a regular rotation.
Yeah, you don't remember, I don't think you were even born when Arkansas was doing 40 minutes of hell back in the early 90s. Man,
that was Richardson, right?
Nolan Richardson. I couldn't remember his name. I could see him in my mind. Couldn't remember his name. They pretty much needed 13 guys, and UNLV sort of needed them back then too. But yeah, that's rare.
Yeah, that is rare. First instance of the term redshirt in today's podcast, but in a normal year, you'd redshirt Ogiaco.
Yeah,
because I don't think there's going to be enough minutes to justify not redshirting him, but. You don't have to redshirt anybody this year.
So the Hokies men's basketball team off the rest of the week. They begin ACC play on Tuesday at home against Clemson. Virginia Tech is home until January 2nd against UVA. So
yeah, I was actually looking at the schedule on TSL, and I was like, did I make a mistake here? Did I forget to put the @ sign in the schedule? Because it's something like 4, 5, 6 home games in a row.
Yeah, the schedule for the rest of the 2020 slate of the season for Virginia Tech, they'll be home against Clemson on Tuesday, December 15th, host Coppin State December 19th, Longwood December 21st, and then Miami December 29th in Blacksburg before going to Charlottesville January 2nd to take on UVA.
Based on the early evidence, that seems somewhat unfortunate.
Well, in an ordinary year, we'd be complaining about all the home games while the students were
while the students were gone.
Yeah, it's not a factor this year.
So for those that regularly listen and watch the Tech Sideline podcast, typically we take a break at about the 40 or 50-minute mark, but we're going to go ahead and take our break right now here on episode 157 of the Tech Sideline podcast, because when we come back, we spend the remainder of the podcast previewing Virginia and Virginia Tech, the Commonwealth Cup on the line this weekend in Blacksburg. Don't go anywhere. You're listening and watching to episode 157 of the Tech Sideline podcast. Welcome back in, episode 157 of the Tech Sideline podcast. Great to have you with us. Evan Hughes alongside of Chris Coleman, Will Stewart behind the scenes, Malcolm Stewart. Tech Sideline podcast presented by Campus Emporium. Will Stewart has a featured item he is wearing.
Today's featured item.
And it's a very comfortable looking jacket. You want to describe it for our listeners, Will?
It is very warm, so I'm going to read you the description. First of all, it's a Virginia Tech Navigator jacket by Charles River. The last featured item we had was a very similar jacket, which had a hoodie, which we have given to Evan for Christmas. That was his Christmas present.
Thank you, guys. Very nice.
He was eyeballing it, going, "Man, I like that thing. I like that."
He's
thing.
secretly mad you didn't get him a Spurtle.
Yes, indeed. Well, Christmas isn't here yet.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what's in those boxes on the floor over there. All right.
I don't even know what a Spurtle is, for the record.
So this is wind and water resistant Riverbank Taslan nylon. There you go. There's a mouthful. With anti-pill Summit fleece lining. I can tell you the lining is nice fleece. So let's see. You got stand-up collar with the wind flap, zippered pockets, and an inside valuables pocket, which I think might hold your cell phone. Elasticized cuffs, and here is the money quote. Weather rated to 16 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh, very important.
Very important.
Blacksburg, buddy.
You can walk across the drill field in this jacket. Now, I'm not going to keep it on because it's going to put me to sleep by making me warm if I keep it on, but I can vouch. Very nice. So that is from Campus Emporium, $79.99. Good price for an awesome jacket. So we'll put the link down in the video description. And the other thing I want to say about Campus Emporium is, remember, free shipping on orders over $12 up through the 13th. I was in there today talking to them. And later on, they will post a guide for if you want it by such and such a date, order it, get it shipped this way on such and such a date. They're really good about that. But they told me, tell people to order now because so many people are shopping online this year. They're not going out.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
And so UPS and FedEx say they're going to keep certain schedules, but they're going to struggle to keep those schedules. So hit campusemporium.com and thank you for the time, and let's move on.
The number one source for Virginia Tech merchandise. You can also see them at 207 North Main Street or 1337 South Main Street. All right, we transition from the hardwood to the gridiron, where we are going to spend the majority of our time today talking about Virginia and Virginia Tech, the Commonwealth Cup on the line this Saturday in Blacksburg. Virginia has won 4 games in a row. The Hokies, meanwhile, are looking for their first win since Louisville on Halloween. Chris, there's so many stories, I feel like, going into this game. Virginia Tech hasn't lost 5 games in a row since 1992. Virginia has a chance to end the season winning 5 games in a row. What is the biggest storyline going into this game on either side?
I mean, the biggest storyline is Fuente, but
yeah,
we're not going to.
David Teal's column today talks about Justin Fuente's uncertain future.
But we're not going to talk about that today because we don't have anything new to add.
Right.
I have no new opinions that I haven't already shared.
Right.
So, that's not a horse we're going to sit around and beat all day. It is the biggest storyline. Now, my opinion is that whatever happens in this game is not going to have an effect on whether
I think we were asked that question on Monday. Will this game affect his future?
Right. No, it won't.
No.
It's going to come down to buyout. It's going to come down to who Whit Babcock thinks he could get to replace him, things like that. Yeah. So, we don't have anything new to add there. So, besides that, I would say the biggest storyline is that for the first time since the 2004 game, Virginia Tech is the hunter and UVA is the hunted. The fan base, they're you don't know what it's like to lose to UVA. Well, you didn't until last year.
I don't remember 2004.
So you don't know what it's like going into a game trying to get the cup back, or just like UVA's players, and some young UVA fans don't know what it's like to defend the cup, right?
Right.
And the players and the coaches on both teams, it's the shoe is on the other foot for the first time in forever. I wasn't old enough to buy a beer the last time, UVA beat Tech, right?
It's true, you weren't.
So to me, that's how does each program handle that? Obviously, Jared Hewitt revealed in player interviews this week that on Sunday or Monday, Fuente showed them a bunch of plays from last year's Tech UVA game where he felt that the UVA players just played harder than the Virginia Tech players. So Fuente is challenging their manhood and their pride. And, the right type of personality will respond well to that. Games are still about X's and O's. They're not all about emotion. But so Tech is going to have to execute. But there shouldn't be any cases this year after getting called out like that where Tech gets outworked in any given play, right?
Yeah, so you go back to my freshman year, 1983. Virginia Tech beat UVA 48-0 in Scott Stadium.
Sheesh.
And I don't remember exactly what the rivalry was doing at the time. It had been back and forth in the early to mid-'70s. And by then, under Bill Dooley, who arrived at Tech in, I believe, 1977, Virginia Tech had seized control of the rivalry. I think they'd won 4 in a row or 5 in a row or something like that.
What year was this for Welsh's tenure at UVA?
So I'm going to get to that,
okay.
Yeah. I believe that the 48-0 Welsh was already there. So Tech had really taken control of the rivalry. And then my sophomore year, UVA came into Lane Stadium and beat Tech 26-23. And that game included, I believe, UVA on 4th and 10 from like Virginia Tech's 20 or 30-yard line, going for the jugular and throwing down to the goal line, and a receiver named John Ford made a fingertip catch to make a big touchdown for UVA, and UVA beat Tech 26-23 in Lane Stadium.
So somebody in 1984 threw the ball on 4th and 10.
Now
that's crazy.
What's interesting about that is, and I'm a little fuzzy on the details, the distance and the yard line. But you fast forward to the 1990 game, and Virginia Tech did something similar. I think they had 4th and 1 on about the 30-yard line or something like that, and they threw to the end zone to Nick Cullen and got a touchdown. So it was neat little bookends. But the reason I tell that story is when you look at that 1984 game, Virginia Tech was the better program. But I remember thinking at that point in time, uh-oh. And I think it was right about then. I think 1984 might have been the first time UVA went to a bowl in a long time. I think they played Purdue. Anybody can correct me if they want to. I didn't review it. I just started talking about it. But that was a moment in time where things turned and UVA started to take control of the rivalry. I think Tech won in maybe 85, 86. Then Tech went on probation, and UVA started getting some top recruits in state and around the country and went on a big run. And that's why the 1990 win was such a big deal. It came in the middle of a 6-game stretch where Tech lost the other 5 games. But the point I'm making is that if you look at this game, yeah, UVA won last year, but what if they win again this year? That'll be 2 in a row. Bronco will have at least temporarily gotten control of the rivalry. And so that to me is one of the big storylines about this. And what if Justin Fuente's not even here next year? You know, it'll almost be similar to the 80s in which Dooley exited stage left and saddled with probation. Frank struggled to beat UVA. Well, what if Bronco has his program moving in the right direction and Virginia Tech has to make a coaching change or something like that? So that's kind of the way I look at it.
I'm going to ask both of you this. One word to describe how you think Virginia Tech fans feel going into this game.
They're very apathetic. That's been a lot of the conversation recently. And give you an example. My wife and I are getting ready to redo our kitchen. We go to an appliance place in Christiansburg. And these guys have, I won't name them, I don't want to give them free advertising, but they've got Virginia Tech football signed photographs framed all over the walls of their showroom. And they're all from the mid-2000s. Pictures of Cedric Humes and Jimmy Williams and Brandon Flowers and guys like that. And so we're talking to the salesman, and he just proceeds to tell me, he's like, yeah, that last game, I didn't really watch that one. You know, I just kind of walked through the room to see what the score was. And that's the point that a lot of Tech fans are reaching right now. I don't have the numbers. I don't know what percentages is. I don't know if it's 80% or 8%. I just know that people are starting to say that kind of stuff on our message boards. I'm starting to see people out in public, and they're just kind of like, yeah, you know, I still look at the score, but I DVR it and look at it later. I don't really watch it live. So apathetic.
Malaise. That old word, right? Yeah. You ask yourself this question sometimes, like, obviously this is our job. We watch the games. If this wasn't my job and I didn't live in Blacksburg and I was living somewhere else where maybe I wasn't surrounded by a bunch of Tech fans, like, would I actually watch? Like, would I have watched? I'll watch the UVA game because I think Tech can win. I don't know if I would have turned on the Clemson game. Like, if I had a completely different job and maybe and you had a
wife and kids.
Right. Maybe if I lived in San Diego or something, like, right. I love that city and nobody out there is a Tech fan, so maybe I find something to do outdoors in the nice 75-degree weather, right?
It's hard for me to say because
you can't. You're not in that position.
I graduated in 1987, and it's not like Virginia Tech was all that great in football back then. You know, they won their first bowl game and their first bowl win in 1986. And And even through the rough Frank Beamer years, I was a diehard, 87, 88, 89, all the way through 92. I went to most games. And then, of course, I started Hokie Central and Tech Sideline in 1995. So I have no perspective of what I would actually be doing if I was just a fan on the outside.
Right.
We're going to spend a lot of time looking at the Virginia offense, the Virginia defense, but I want to spend a little bit of time talking about Virginia Tech. If the Hokies are going to win this game, Chris, what do they have to do?
Well, they got to have some balance. UVA is number 3 in the conference in rush defense per PFF grades, but they're pretty healthily behind Clemson and Pitt in grade. And, Khalil Herbert had success against both of those teams on the ground. Yeah. So I think Virginia Tech can get some stuff going on the ground. The question is, can they be balanced? UVA is awful in coverage. I mean, just absolutely dreadful.
As a team and as individual players.
So can Virginia Tech's passing game get enough going where they can be balanced? So the key there, obviously, is to show the ability to run the football and don't fall behind by like 2 scores where you get to the point where UVA knows you're going to throw, because Tech can't throw it in that situation.
So things get to be a bit of a blur for me sometimes, so you can fill in some details here. I was thinking Tech's lost 4 in a row and 5 out of 6. And I was thinking last night, and it was late, and I was working on the game preview, so I didn't really get a chance to research it. But I found myself asking the question, what has been the nature of those losses? Right off the top of my head, the nature of those losses has been what I consider to be coaching mistakes, or just things like calling the timeout right before you block the field goal, against Liberty. The coaches maybe not capitalizing on some things, players making mistakes. There have been a couple instances I thought where the team just caved. I thought they caved against Pitt and against Clemson when they started turning it over.
Right.
So the conclusion I drew in my mind was, now on the other hand, you go to the Miami game, Virginia Tech was leading 24-13 with 20 minutes to go and then just didn't score again. And I don't remember the details of why. But to me, it's just, so what I put in our game preview was Virginia Tech needs a more consistent effort from all 3 phases of the game: luck and execution, player effort, and coaching. They see, and frankly, not caving if things start to go south on you. In some games this year, Tech has hung in there and been really tough when things go south. But there have been a couple games there where they folded up their tails.
Well, the 2 most recent games.
Yes.
And the thing about those 2 games is, I think Pitt is a horrible matchup.
Right.
And Clemson just has completely superior talent. And I don't think either one of those is the case with UVA. So I don't think that's going to happen this week.
Yeah.
They do get, UVA got Joey Blunt, one of their best safeties, or their best safety by far. He's only played in like 4 or 5 games this year because he got hurt early against Clemson, but he did come back and play almost the whole game against Boston College last week. So we'll see if that has any effect.
So they may play better than their grades, is what you're saying.
But it's possible. Now there still should be a little bit of rust there because he's only played in 1 game since early October or something like that. But on the whole, I look at Virginia and I see a solid, tough football team that gets the most out of their ability, but they're not world beaters at all. Not even
really
close.
In any phase of the game.
Right. Brennan Armstrong's very good, I think. They rush the passer pretty well. But
from the linebacker position primarily.
But somebody on the board this morning basically said, and this is his phrasing, but he basically said, it looks like this game is going to be one big slap fight. And honestly, I can't
picture a couple of cats doing this.
I can't disagree with that, to be honest with you. It's sad to say, but I think Bronco Mendenhall's done a really good job, and I respect them because they get the most out of their talent. Honestly, that's what disappoints me the most about Tech is I don't think Tech gets the most out of their talent.
Consistently.
Consistently. Like, I look at UVA's defense and, you know, these guys, they're linebackers that are 6'3". Well, they're 230 pounds. They're 240 pounds. They're 235 pounds. They're 225 pounds. Well, they're not 210 pounds.
I think a Tisdale comment's coming.
Yeah. So
have a sandwich, Alan.
Yeah. So, I as a program, I feel like Bronco Mendenhall has done a good job of getting the most out of his players' ability.
The culture, regardless of what you think about it, seems to be consistent.
Oh, yeah. I would agree with that. Now, they still don't have the talent across the board to be better than, you know, they were good last year, but I felt
but Perkins was exceptional.
Well, I think Armstrong's better. That's the thing. I think he's better than Perkins.
Real quick, because I do want to spend a lot of time talking about Armstrong. I want to get into UVA offense and defense, but quickly, I want to ask this question because you brought up a point. You said that UVA secondary is one of the weaker spots of their defense. Yeah. Question is, if the Hokies are going to attack that secondary, who's going to be throwing the football?
That's a good question.
And that's why I wanted to transition quickly for a moment.
I think it's going to be Hendon Hooker.
Struggled to get warm on the sideline. His dad, in an article with Mike Niziolek of the Roanoke Times, said that he was doing well. Braxton Burmeister exited the game. He participated in practice on Sunday. But even if both didn't get hurt, both Burmeister and Hendon Hooker split reps essentially in the game on Saturday against Clemson. Chris Coleman, who's going to be under center for the Hokies?
I mean, if you hold a gun to my head and force me to place a bet, I guess I would say Hendon Hooker. Mm-hmm. You know, we don't know the status of Burmeister's injury. And
and the different thing is Burmeister threw the ball for him really well.
Very did.
Against
10
Clemson.
of 12.
10 of 12.
Yeah. The thing is about Hooker, it's like, you know, what really happened there? And, you know, we've heard that they haven't announced this, of course, and they're not going to, but we heard like the official diagnosis was something like anxiety combined with the cold led to that chemical reaction, whatever
that physical reaction was.
Right. So I'm not so much worried about the cold part because the high is going to be in the 50s. It's going to be a nice day. It'll be chilly that evening, but it's not going to be as cold as it was, you know, for that Clemson game.
It sounds like
it's the anxiety part that concerns me. And if that's unpredictable in nature, I mean, it's not likely it's going to happen again this week.
Well, the problem was they didn't have Burmeister available after that happened to Hendon.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And it does sound like both will be available this weekend.
I guess.
Again, I'm looking at the tweet from Norm Wood, an article he put out, and as well as Andy Bitter saying that it looks like should be available, both of them. The question more is, so who's going to start? Would you be surprised to see both quarterbacks split snaps on Saturday?
No, I would not be surprised. Particularly because Burmeister did such a good job against Clemson.
Yeah, and really, you know, it's and if you're a football coach, like throw out the anxiety cold thing by Hooker. The fact of the matter is, you know, he started that game. He went out there on the very first snap and did the exact opposite of what they practiced all week. It's like he didn't pay any attention at all week, or he forgot. Just inexplicably forgot when he got on the field. And what I mean by that is Virginia Tech practice, you know, breaking the huddle very late.
Right. And snapping the ball relatively quickly.
Right. So, and Hooker broke the huddle with like 25 seconds left on the play clock on the very first play from scrimmage, right? Yeah. So
that's got to drive coaches crazy.
If you're a coach and you're like, oh my God, we just practiced the direct opposite all week, and then you didn't do it.
And remember, coaches play guys that they can trust.
Right. So so then you take that guy out of the game for that, and you put in his backup, and his backup goes 10 of 12, and the offense is fairly efficient with him in there. It gives you pause, to think about what should I do. I think on balance, Hooker seems like the best option, but he also hasn't been as good the last few weeks as he was in the middle of the season either. So I don't know. Honestly, I'll be 100% honest with you. I'm not comfortable with either. Not 100% comfortable.
So here's this is neither here nor there, but I randomly ran this stat, and this is in our game preview. In the last 5 games, starting with the Louisville game, the Hokies are 1-4, but their quarterbacks have completed 71.4% of their passes, 80 of 112, and I calculated that like 2 or 3 times because I couldn't believe it. 71.4% of their passes, for 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions.
That's incredible. Like
it just doesn't seem like it, right?
Well, Tech.
Now, granted, that's only a couple hundred yards a game.
I don't think I've ever seen such a limited passing offense put up such good numbers at times.
From an efficiency
standpoint. Brad Cornelson schematically, as far as seeing what his players' strengths and weaknesses are, and here's what we draw up to hide those weaknesses and take advantage of the strengths, he's really, really, really good.
The numbers prove it.
Right. And
when a guy like Josh Jackson does pretty well at Tech and then flops,
horrible at Maryland.
Somewhere else.
Right, exactly. And Hooker's so limited in the passing game, but he's able to put up.
The numbers are good.
Like he was like 12 of 12 against Louisville, 10 of 12 against Boston College. Yeah. I mean, just so incredibly efficient.
So that, let me jump in here. That's a collective passer rating of 178.5, which if it was an individual would be number 10 in the country in passing efficiency.
Right. Now here's the thing. You change offensive coordinators, which one way or another, I think Virginia Tech will have a different offensive coordinator next year. You change offensive coordinators, and maybe the next guy's better at quarterback development, but he's not as good as the stuff Brad Cornelson is good at.
Hiding the weaknesses and leveraging the strengths.
Exactly. So I don't know. It kind of depends on how much money you have to spend. You know, I know for what the Brad Cornelson salary, $450,000, $470,000.
$475,000, yeah.
I just don't think there's a lot of guys on the market that are as good at that price range.
So a project I can't wait to do is take the head coach's salary, his offensive coordinator salary, and defensive coordinator salary. What's the ratio? What's the percentage? Because there are schools where the head coach makes $4 million and the coordinators make $1 to $1.5 million.
Right.
At Virginia Tech, the head coach makes $4.3 million and the coordinators make $475 in the case of Cornelson and $600 in the case of Justin Hamilton. Just interesting data point. We'll do that at some point.
Previewing Virginia Tech in Virginia. That'll take place on Saturday at 8 o'clock on the ACC Network. It's episode 157 of the Tech Sideline Podcast. Evan Hughes, Chris Coleman, Will Stewart, Malcolm Stewart behind the scenes. If you have a question for Will or Chris, be sure to drop it in the YouTube chat. We will get to those at the end of the show. Every week for the previews, we based a lot of our talking points off of Chris's preview article, which is available right now on techsideline.com. I'm going to ask a question that you asked in your article, Chris. Is Brennan Armstrong, UVA's quarterback, the most dangerous quarterback Virginia Tech has faced all year?
It's possible. I mean, he's very, very efficient passing the football. Let's see. This is AIS Hokie 05.
AIS Hokie 05.
His little write-up using PFF numbers. He's third in the ACC behind only Sam Howell and Trevor Lawrence in overall quarterback rating. His big-time throw rate, meaning NFL quality throws, is third in the ACC. His turnover-worthy play rate is fifth lowest. Excels in the mid-range game.
He performs much better when he's not being pressured. And we've talked about that all year, how some guys like Jerkovic are basically the same.
Yeah.
Armstrong's a guy, if you pressure him, he's not as good
But, he's also their leading rusher.
So let's go over those stats.
His design carries. He gets about 8
7.4 yards a carry?
7.4 yards per carry on design quarterback runs.
Yeah.
So it's just he's very – it's wrong to say he's dynamic because here's another stat. He's near the bottom of the league in terms of missed tackles forced. So that means they're doing a really good job of scheming running lanes open for him and blocking for him and things like that. But, on balance between passing and running, it's quite possible that he's the best or most dangerous that Tech has faced.
So here are the rushing statistics. So Armstrong is their leading rusher with 111 carries, 529 yards, 4.8 yards a carry, and that includes all of the times he's been sacked.
Right.
However many that is. I was not able to find specifically how many times he has been sacked. Wayne Talapapa is second with 86 carries, 387 yards, so 142 fewer yards, 4.5 yards a carry. And he's a running back, and he's a guy I've always kind of liked.
He's a tough guy. Excuse me.
But he's not particularly dynamic. Not a
his
tackle
longest
breaker.
run on the year is 19 yards.
Yeah.
Right. So
let's compare to Virginia Tech. So again, Armstrong 529 yards. Khalil Herbert, of course, has 1,020 yards. Hendon Hooker has 620 yards on just 9 more carries. So Hooker's averaging 5.2 yards a carry. Armstrong 4.8. So UVA just doesn't appear to have much of a rushing game. Doesn't appear to. Particularly when compared to Virginia Tech, because their top rusher is their quarterback, and he would be third on Virginia Tech's team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess you could say the same thing if you're UVA. Is can you be balanced on offense?
Yeah.
That's kind of the same issue for them. How do you say his name?
Wayne Talapapa.
I always just call him Talapapa.
Yep. See, I can't actually twist my tongue in the way
So
that allows me to
Armstrong
pronounce that.
completes about 60% of his passes, 1,800 yards, which is decent. 16 touchdowns, 9 interceptions.
Let me add these stats as well.
It's weird that he has that many interceptions with that low of a turnover-worthy play rate. So
That's true.
Which leads you to believe that maybe some of those were deflected passes and things like that.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And their leading receiver, Billy Kemp, has 58 catches and just 1 touchdown. So you start looking through these.
Per catch.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is he also leads the ACC. Billy Kemp, their number 1 receiver, leads the ACC in receptions a game with just over 6. So only 1 touchdown, but he leads the ACC in receptions.
And he's like my size, but he actually plays like 2/3 of his snaps on the outside too.
Yeah,
as opposed to the slot.
And most of his targets are short range. It's not like he's going deep or anything.
I'm telling you, man. Like the guy, I think it was Reese Stewart who said it on the board. A slap fight. We should. What number podcast is this?
157.
We should entitle this TSL Podcast number 157. The slap fight
preview.
No,
well, it's too late. I've already made up the thumbnail,
and
it's taken back the cup.
We'll get to Armstrong in a minute because I want to talk about the weapons besides Armstrong, their quarterback. But first player in UVA program history to put up back-to-back 400-yard passing games. Did it against Abilene Christian, but then he did it against Boston College. And he's the only player in the FBS this season who has gone over 200-plus passing yards and 45-plus rushing yards 6 times in the same game.
He's like death by 1,000 cuts, I guess.
I think he's good, but I also think the last 2 games, Abilene Christian, I don't even know why that game's getting played at this point in the season, right? All it did is cost him Charles Snowden, who's a good, solid linebacker for him.
We'll get to him in a minute.
And then in Boston College, I don't know what to think about Boston College because, Hendon Hooker was 10 of 12 and, just insanely efficient passing the ball against them. So I really don't know how good they are.
And yet their record's fairly decent.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is.
Last I saw, they were maybe.
So I don't know. I think Armstrong is good, and you can make a case for him being the most dangerous quarterback Tech has faced. I don't know that he actually is. Obviously, if I'm picking a quarterback, I'm picking Trevor Lawrence, of course. But as far as Armstrong leading the team in rushing and being a very efficient passer, he definitely brings. I think he brings more balance to their offense than Bryce Perkins did last year. So from that standpoint, I think he's the more dangerous player. I also don't think he's as dynamic a rusher as Perkins is. Tech isn't going to blitz him, and he's going to break away from the blitz and rush for 70 yards.
Well, Perkins was a big-time tackle breaker.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different. I do think Armstrong is much better in the passing game than Perkins, in my opinion.
So besides Perkins on offense, you go into your game preview and you talk about the other skill position players and how there's not a ton of big-time playmakers, basically what you were saying. Is that fair to say in terms of the explosive?
I think they've slowly improved their wide receiver talent at UVA, but I still don't think it's up to snuff. Jana's a solid player, nothing special.
Looks like Lavelle Davis Jr. is someone to look out.
Yes,
Davis seems to be
he's a true freshman. He's 6'7", 210 pounds. Bronco really seems like he favors bigger players, with the notable exception of Billy Kemp. He wants a lot of size on his team. Lavelle Davis, I think he's got 17 catches for the year, but he's averaging about 26 yards a catch.
Correct.
It's just at 6'7", which is the same height as Bucky Hodges, coincidentally, right? Wasn't he 6'7"? Or was it
there might be a
6'6"?
video about it.
Yeah, it might be one or two. Yeah. So he's their biggest playmaker, I would say, Lavelle Davis Jr. And just really, really tall. And their starting right tackle is 6'10". So you've got a 6'10" right tackle, a 6'7" tight end, a 6'7" wide receiver, and defensively, you've got long, rangy linebackers and things like that. So I think there's a certain physical style of player that Bronco prefers. Mm-hmm. And I think when it comes to recruiting, that they're probably one of those teams that stick to that metric. Like, okay, if you're a defensive end and you're not this height, we're not going to offer you, right? Or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, and I've seen that argument made before for, like, let's say you decide you don't want to recruit any cornerbacks under 6 feet tall, and then you see someone that you really like on film and he happens to be 5'9" or 5'10", you think he's a really, really good football player, so you're like, well, we'll make an exception for him. And then the next year you see somebody just like that, and you're like, well, we'll make an exception for them. 4 or 5 years down the line, you're going to have like 4 or 5 cornerbacks on your roster that are 5'9" or 5'10", and you've just defeated the entire purpose of having that system in place where you say, we don't take anybody shorter than 6 feet tall, right? So it seems to me like they just seem like they have a what's the word? A template,
right,
for certain players at certain positions and things like that.
Looking at the offensive line, according to Pro Football Focus, they're number 1 in the ACC in pass blocking and number 4 in run blocking. So a pretty sound offensive line across the board.
I mean, it's hard to get around 6'10".
I think I think there are some numbers there about in the running game, how many yards before first contact, and they're kind of solid.
They don't have a standout player. Like, none of these guys on their offensive line are as good as Christian Darrisaw or Luke Tenuta, to be honest with you. But they are solid across the board.
Chris, you want to tell our listeners about the right tackle and his size?
I heard he's 6'10". Yeah.
6'10",
but there's more to pass blocking than just your offensive line. Are your running backs filling in, picking up blitzes and things like that.
So that's the right tackle. I just saw it's 6'4", 6'4", 6'3", 6'10". So that is a very tall right tackle in Ryan Swoboda. So, anyways, last thing I'll add about the offense before we transition to the defense. You guys bring up the rushing ability of quarterback Brennan Armstrong. He leads the team in rushing with 529 yards. Talapapa, 387 yards. Their number 1 running back behind that. So there's not a lot of big numbers for their running backs.
Their top 2 running backs, are like 400 yards behind Khalil Herbert. Like, if you combine their numbers, their top 2 running backs, they're
still far behind
Khalil Herbert. So they don't have a lot of dynamic ability at the running back spot for sure. They're not a dynamic football team.
No.
They get the most out of their ability.
Let's transition to the defensive side of the ball as we continue to preview Virginia, episode 157 of the Tech Sideline Podcast. UVA has the 3rd ranked ACC rushing defense, according to Pro Football Focus. And Chris, as you allude to in the preview, they are big and tough up front.
Yeah. They run a three-man line. Technically speaking, a 3-4 defense, but there's so much gray area these days with personnel groupings, and if Tech goes spread formation, then one of those linebackers comes off the field and a DB comes in. So then you're basically like a 3-3-5, and or you walk up a linebacker and it's really a 4-man line. Yeah. So I don't think there's any such thing as like a straight up 3-4 or 4-3 defense anymore. But their defensive ends are 6'3", 280 and 6'2", 280. Got a nose tackle who's 6'2", 305. Their linebackers, 3 of the 4 linebackers are 6'3" or taller, and they all go between 225 and 240. Their shortest defensive back is 6 feet tall. Like I said, it just seems like a template.
Yeah, so you had Charles Snowden, who is 6'7", 240, and he is apparently hurt.
Oh, he got Did he break his leg against Abilene Christian early in the game?
Oh my gosh!
It's terrible because he's a good player for him, and he actually fits
he's a senior. And,
I forget what, and he's one of their prototype guys.
6'7", 240.
Yeah,
and now the thing I don't know is their current outside linebackers are Noah Taylor and Matt Gaham. I don't know which one of those guys was playing opposite Snowden when Snowden was playing.
But they're both seniors though.
So if it was Taylor, then you had him at 6'5" on one side and Snowden at 6'7" on the other, and you can walk either one of those guys up.
Yeah,
and they can function as a defensive end.
Yeah, no, that was a big loss because Snowden really kind of felt like the heart and soul of that defense.
Well, I've talked about him all the time.
That's what happens when you recruit to a template.
How effective he is against spread offenses. He's a big tall guy with long arms and he can get in the passing lanes, and he's done that to Virginia Tech and he's done that to everybody.
Yeah. This Noah Taylor, I was watching him when he had the long interception return for a touchdown against
BC?
Louisville. Louisville was driving first drive of the game, and they were about to score a touchdown, and threw it right to him, and he took it all the way back for a touchdown. It was a 14-point swing, basically. And he was just so long, 6'5", 225. And, when you recruit to a certain template and you lose a Snowden, well, guess what? His backup is a long, lengthy guy, too. Maybe not 6'7" like Snowden is. I mean, that's hard to replicate with every single one of your players.
Yeah.
But, you don't go from
6'7" to 5'10".
Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
A couple of other numbers from according to Pro Football Focus. So overall, UVA's defense number 6 in the conference, but ranked 14th in coverage. You talked about it earlier. They have a 49.8 coverage grade. Only team below a 50. And Tech's coverage grade is 66.2, which is 8th.
Right. Virginia Tech is a 66.2.
So and to put that in the context, you probably think Virginia Tech's coverage has been terrible this year, and certainly at times that it has. It still ranks 8th out of 14 teams in the ACC. And it's almost like 20 points higher in the grades than UVA's is. I mean, UVA's has been an absolute disaster at times. So
they've compensated for that by blitzing, from what I understand.
Probably, yeah. They're third in pass rush. So if you blitz the quarterback and you get a sack, it's successful defensive play, right? But PFF grades everybody on every play. So if they see that cornerback's getting burned, even if it's a sack, that cornerback's going to get a negative play.
Okay.
Right? That's how football coaches.
Cornerback.
I mean, PFF grades like football coaches do. Like no cornerbacks coach in the world is going to tell his cornerback, yeah, you got burned, but no big deal because we got a sack.
You got the all-22 film that shows the whole field.
He's going to get a negative grade from his coach.
And while the wide receiver's running past the corner and Charles Snowden's making a sack, you still get a negative in the coverage grade.
Yeah, because Snowden's not going to make that sack every time, right? When he doesn't, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So, big thing for Virginia Tech's offense this week, protect the quarterback too. And because if you do protect him, you should have some opportunity to generate some big plays in the passing game.
All right, final question before we get to picks. What unit should scare Virginia Tech more? Virginia's offense or Virginia's defense?
I would say Virginia's offense because of I said death by 1,000 tiny cuts earlier in the podcast, and I remember the 2005 Miami game where it was 27-7. At one point, it was 27-0, I think. But one of the things I remember about that game, I remember writing this up in my Monday article following that 2005. Did I say 2007?
Oh, God.
You said 2005.
There's a 2005 Miami game. I can't remember who their quarterback was. But if they needed 7 yards on third down, he got 8. If they needed 12, he got 13. If they needed 4, he got 5. He was just barely either running or throwing. Wright? I think it was Kyle Wright. They were just barely picking up first downs. And that's kind of the way I see Brennan Armstrong as a guy just you think you got him and you don't, and they've got another set of downs. And that's what worries me is nobody's talking about Brennan Armstrong. And he's a third at least in terms of grades. I'm not talking about passing efficiency. In terms of grades, he's the third best quarterback in the ACC, and nobody's talking about it. And so a guy like that can be really frustrating.
It was Kyle Wright, by the way.
Okay, good.
The quarterback. So
good job, Chris.
Hey, before we get to predictions, I was talking with Damian Salas yesterday, and he told me this interesting stat about Virginia Tech and UVA. Just figured I'd throw it out there because it's very interesting. So there's only been 22 times where Virginia Tech and UVA men's basketball have played at least one game each prior to the football game between the two schools. Saturday will be the first time Virginia Tech men's basketball has a better record than UVA men's basketball, and UVA football has a better record than Virginia Tech football. UVA had a better football record in 2018, but both basketball teams were unbeaten. 5 of the 22 times the football records were tied.
How about that?
So, very interesting stat. I thought that was interesting going into.
So it's the first time at the football meeting that Tech's basketball team has had a better record?
Saturday will be the first time Virginia Tech men's basketball has had a better record than UVA men's basketball. And UVA football has had a better record than Virginia Tech football.
Yeah, it's wild.
Don't each of the basketball teams have one loss? Or did UVA lose a second?
I believe they've lost twice.
Wow.
I don't know. I'll trust Damian though.
Yeah, I'm trusting Damian.
We should have a Damian trivia every week.
Well, that kind of thing.
A Damian fact every week on the podcast. Yeah, he's got some good resources.
I thought that would be fun to throw in just before.
Well, Bill Ross got a handful of students that just come up with stuff like that all the time. David Cunningham and Shelton Moss and guys like that. They're always dishing these obscure stats that are interesting.
Yeah, like no pressure, Damian, but every single podcast we're going to need something really interesting.
So did I tell the story about being on Rick Watson's show and doing the trivia question on the last podcast?
You did, yes.
Question.
So I won't repeat it.
Okay, now time to transition into picks. We have a tweet from Richie Gallimore who tweets at me. UVA 5-1 at home, 0-3 on the road. Haven't played a road game in 7 weeks.
Wow.
Couple of other stats going into this game. Cavaliers are trying to win consecutive Commonwealth Cups for the first time since 1998, the last time the Cavaliers won in Blacksburg. There's a lot riding on this game. UVA has a chance to win 5 games in a row for the first time since 2007. Virginia Tech in jeopardy of losing 5 in a row for the first time since 1990.
When's the last time Tech won a home game? Boston College? Where they lost 3 or 4 home games in a row? Something like that?
Louisville was a road game?
Yeah.
Chris Coleman. Does Virginia Tech get the Commonwealth Cup back this weekend?
2 years ago, I thought UVA was clearly the better team. And last year, I thought Virginia Tech should have won the game.
Right.
And the opposite happened each year. This year, I think UVA is better. Not by a lot, but just a little bit better. You look at the records, UVA got off to a 1-4 start. They're playing better recently. Tech, it's been the other way around. Look, everybody's schedule's different. If Tech had played Abilene Christian late in the season, or maybe even Boston College instead of Pitt, which is a horrible matchup late in the season, then maybe it's opposite and we don't feel so bad about it. But I don't think there's a whole lot of difference between the two teams. I do think in terms of morale right now, I think UVA probably holds the edge. If the trend continues of the team that shouldn't win actually wins, I think that means Virginia Tech would win this one. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I see that happen in 3 years in a row. I'd like to pick it, but it'd be an emotional pick on my part. So I think UVA squeezes it out. Touchdown game, decided late, 31-24, I'll call it.
So let's see. I picked the same score, but I picked the Hokies to win. And let's see what my justification for that is.
I believe it was Tech's due to play a good game.
No, right? Here's my justification. I just can't bring myself to pick Virginia to win. Can't do it. This is a pretty even matchup. I'm reading from our game preview. I'm pinning my hopes on Virginia Tech. I drew the analogy earlier in my section of the preview. If you picture a Hemi V8, Tech's operated on anywhere from 2 or 3 to 6 or 7 cylinders at any given point. They've never really operated on all 8 cylinders at once. So I just can't pick UVA to win, and that's no disparagement of Chris or anything like that. And I'm pinning my hopes on Tech acting more like the full V8 instead of just having a few dead cylinders. So 31-24 Hokies for me.
Okay, so same score.
Yeah.
Just different
And
teams.
he doesn't read my sections before making, or he doesn't read my prediction before making.
I don't read his
picks,
prediction.
so-
I read the whole preview, then I write my own thing up, then I come back.
Yeah, exactly. So it's seems like we pick very identical scores every week.
And most of the time, if Chris picks the Hokies to lose and I pick them to win, 2/3 of the time he's right.
Or no, well, it's I think it's when our opinions are different. Whether we pick them to I picked Tech to beat Pitt. Oh my God, wasn't I an idiot?
Well, that's unusual. Right. He picked Tech to beat Pitt. I picked Pitt to beat Tech,
right.
And I was right. That's kind of unusual. But specifically, when I go with my heart and pick Tech to win, and Chris goes with his brain and picks Tech to lose, more often than not, he's right.
Especially like in the year of COVID, I'm kind of like the 10-man man. I don't have much of a heart towards this, so I'm going to call it like I see it.
Yeah.
And I think Tech certainly could win the game, but like I don't. Their Tech is favored again, right?
2.5 points.
When is the last time Tech covered a spread?
I think they have failed to cover the spread the last 4 games or something like that.
4?
Although Miami
was
Tech was favored against Miami.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, which means they failed.
Right.
Because they were.
They were favored against Miami.
Right.
That's nuts.
So, to me, it's just like, when is Las Vegas going to
wise up?
Wise up, right? So, I don't know. Could go either way. I hope Tech wins because I want to see, even if just for a day or two, I want to see the fan base happy again. And if it is Fuente's last game at Virginia Tech, I would like him to go out with the feeling of, at least I got the cup back in my last game, right? Because however good or bad a job he's done overall, he's a really hard-working dude. There's no scandals, no probation. One of the cleanest coaches in the country from what I understand in terms of recruiting. So hope he goes out well if this is indeed his last game.
It's similar to the Mike London situation at UVA, although London was beloved. They just knew they had to let him go.
Right.
Fuente is not beloved.
He's a much better coach, but he's not beloved. Right?
That's very true.
Yeah.
And if Tech's able to win, that gives incredible, a lot of momentum going into the offseason. So, okay, let's transition over to our YouTube live questions. We've got a lot of questions today.
I bet we do.
Let's go ahead.
I miss Malcolm's disembodied head, man.
I did too. Malcolm, can you throw yourself up here, please?
While Evan asked the question.
Yes. Just so. There he is. See,
all you have to do is push a button. You're set up.
Gosh, he's the best producer in the land. Okay, here we go.
Except for when he kicks the HDMI cables.
Thomas Hull, is Virginia Tech going to get a bowl game?
I got no idea.
I don't know. Like BC announced today that they're not going to a bowl, even if they get invited to one.
Huh.
Their players are just ready to get it over with.
Yeah, like who wants a swab stuck up their nose?
It's one of those. It's going to be one of those things. Like Jarrett Hewitt earlier this week was talking about. Oh, if we get a bowl invite, we're going. There's no way we're not going. So Hewitt wants to play in a bowl game. I'm guessing there's a lot of players on that team that are just ready to go home for the holidays once a UVA game's over with. So it's one of those things where you might end up in a bowl game if you beat UVA. How ready are you going to be to play it?
How many bowl games are there going to be?
It's the same thing for the other team, too. Right. I mean, the other team Tech is facing, maybe they'll take it seriously. Maybe they won't. I don't know. I'm not worried about the bowl streak. The bowl streak, in my opinion, was a bit of an albatross for our program.
Yeah, Chris is not a fan.
And
I'm not a fan because I don't think it means jack squat in recruiting.
Right.
They plaster it all over the media guide. They plaster it all over their social media. Recruits pick a school based on facilities, fit, how they fit into the team, whether they feel like it's home, uniforms. I'm not kidding you, uniforms. They don't sit there and go, I'm going there because they go to a bowl game.
These 5-star and 4-star recruits, especially these days, are like, well, I'm going to be there for 3 years, and then I'll opt out of the bowl game to protect my NFL draft status. So they don't care about the bowl game.
No. It used to be a fun trip and you got a swag bag, but now I just don't think recruits care.
No.
Trey then asks, will a team win the Commonwealth Cup on Saturday or one team lose it like in 2018?
That's a fair question. Oh.
I don't know. That catch Dalton Keene made, that kind of looked like somebody winning.
Tech made a couple of big-time plays in that game. In the passing game. Trey Turner and Dalton Keene was on 4th down, right? That was a fourth down play.
Scare money don't make money.
Exactly.
That's what the famous quote came from.
Yeah. Well, and
thank you, Ryan
and
Willis.
Then, and Tech did get a couple of lucky bounces, like the fumble, which they recovered in the end zone.
Yes, the Stephen Peoples fumble.
Yes,
what an amazing play.
Exactly. And then obviously the Perkins fumble in overtime. So it was a mixture of Tech making some plays and UVA getting a luck.
I would say it's more likely that somebody's going to lose the game this year.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Fernando asks, how many yards do you see Herbert rushing for? And do you think Virginia Tech will run a similar game plan as last week or more of a hurry-up offense against their defense?
I think they'll run their regular offense, and I think Herbert will get about 130 yards. I feel good about him. I don't know why.
I think he's going over 100, and I do think I don't think it's going to be like some kind of special like game plan as far as stay in the huddle or
nothing like that.
Things like that. I think it'll look normal.
I just thought Herbert looked so good against Clemson.
Mm-hmm. He looked healthy 100%.
Yeah.
Especially considering the competition.
Yeah.
Tom Lester, when I was asking for the words that you guys were giving about how you think the fan base feels, Tom says, not apathetic at all, not smug either. Big game still for this almost old guard Hokie. So there's one
Tom's
person
a good
chiming
fan.
in. Tom also writes, can Virginia Tech play physical football like Penn State plays basketball? So going back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast.
Hoffman can.
Let's see here.
Hey, by the way, let's go on that tangent a little bit. Brock Hoffman in his first Commonwealth Cup game.
Oh, boy.
That'll be interesting.
We'll see.
Especially after
we'll see
last
if he
week.
tries to get baited.
Yeah.
See if there's any of those UVA guys try to bait him.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't blame him if they did. It's a rivalry game.
We're going to try and get to everybody's questions. So we'll go a little bit more rapid fire. Assuming Hooker gets the start on Saturday, how quick will Coach Justin Fuente be with the hook to get Burmeister in there in the event of a fumble or a pick?
I think they'll rotate both of them.
He was pretty quick to give him the hook last week, wasn't he? I don't think it would necessarily be because of a fumble or because of an interception. I mean, those things happen sometimes, but if Hooker came out there and like forgets about the game plan again, then all he's going to be out there just like that.
I think he's going to rotate him anyway. I think the big reason, I don't know exactly when the broken toe incident occurred, but I remember thinking at some point in the middle of the season, boy, he gave up on Braxton Burmeister.
Yeah.
When he said he was going to rotate him basically all year.
That question was from Hokie94 CPA. Question from Billy Parvedum. Do we have recency bias when talking about Beamer plus Fuente? Last few years of Coach Beamer, we had to beat UVA to make bowls, and we had bad losses. Are we really that much worse now than in the last years of Coach Beamer?
We're better in some ways and worse in some ways, but we're kind of the same. I would say.
I'm very worried about recruiting.
Yeah. Well, I was worried about recruiting then.
But I wasn't very worried about it.
I was, because if the Beamer era had gone on any longer, like that 2016 class
was rough.
Well, that 2016 class is one of the reasons. There were some good players in it, but there was hardly any depth at all.
Right.
So that was one of the reasons. It's like, okay, those 2014, 2013, 2015 recruits were pretty good. But once they all cycled out of the program in 2017. And at that point, Justin Fuente's oldest recruits that he personally recruited were either true sophomores or redshirt freshmen.
Yeah.
And the guys older than them were from that 2016 class. And that was
and that's when 2018 happened.
That's when 2018 happened, right?
Yeah.
So you had upperclassmen that weren't very talented, and behind them just a bunch of freshmen and sophomores, or in this case, a bunch of freshmen and sophomores actually starting. So I was worried about recruiting then. Like, if the Beamer era had gone on any longer, like it was just going to be impossible to get players as far as that situation was going. But I mean, we saw it with Bud Foster, man. How could we recruit anybody on the defensive side of the ball for the last year or two of the Bud Foster era?
Yeah.
Well, when you're just asking the question the entire time, when is he going to retire? He's only got 1 year left on his contract. So we've done that to ourselves twice now in a 4-year span.
Right.
And it's disappointing, but that's one of the reasons we're in the situations that we are. And there's a lot here that I think Justin Fuente deserves criticism for, as far as like the culture buy-in aspect of it. But there were some talent issues that were caused by other things that were out of his control.
Do we suffer from recency bias? It's possible. I think we always do as human beings.
We definitely do.
Yeah.
I mean, God, it was 6 years ago when, right? 0-0.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had some rough ones, but that was that was pretty rough, right? So 2015, we gained 100 yards of offense against Pitt in that that year.
Part of me wants to go back and watch that game because I can't even imagine what that looks like. Well, on speed watching.
Gosh, yeah. So
how do you do that?
Yes,
100 yards.
There is a recency bias, and the bottom line is, what time did that 2005 Miami game start? Probably 7:30 or 8. Let's say it started.
It was a night game.
So this program has been in a steady decline ever since the moment Virginia Tech took the field in that Miami game in 2005. Now, the decline accelerated, 8, 9 years ago, something like that. But we started the slide that night when we lost yet another big game that everybody was watching and looked bad doing it.
Well, I think that's when in-state recruiting, which we still got some good players after that, David Wilson, Logan Thomas, guys like that. But
well, that was when that was the year, if you recall, Beamer made all the offensive staff changes after the season. And Tech only signed one top 10 player in the state that year. And there was worry that, oh my gosh, this is going to continue. So, he got rid of Pierman. Rogers left on his own to go to the NFL. Whammy left. And then you replace Pierman with Kurt Newsome, right? We still had an opportunity at that point. We were a big enough name to where I think Beamer could have wrangled as much money as he wanted to, probably at that point.
At that point in time, yeah.
Yeah, so I think Tech could have really gone out and got some credible coaches that offseason and they did on defense with Torian Gray, but other than that, offense they did not. And that's really when the program began its decline right there, is the lack of they just didn't they replaced Tony Ball with Kevin Sherman. And Sherman's not a bad coach, but he's not Tony Ball. And they replaced Kevin Rogers with Mike O'Kane, who came out of retirement to take the job and was not interested in recruiting. And Danny Pierman coaches at Clemson now, for goodness sake, and he was replaced by Kurt Newsome, who's the head coach at Emory and Henry now. Right. So we downgraded our coaching staff after that season, and that was the beginning of a slow decline. We survived for a while based on reputation.
Well, and you had some really good players like Tyrod and Ryan Williams and David Wilson and Logan Thomas that really kept things going.
Right.
Let me jump in real quick. I want to get one more instead of a rapid fire, and we can let this go for about 3 to 4 minutes. This is from Jonathan Larrick, all caps message, and then another message that's not all caps.
Why is he yelling?
First one, this team doesn't deserve to go to a bowl game. A bowl game should be the last thing on any Hokies fan mind. Then he goes lowercase, goes, mostly because this is what is wrong with us, worrying about a bowl streak. Why? It means nothing. So far from being relevant in big-time football, it isn't even funny. That's his opinion. But I'm curious. Let me take what he just said and pose this question to you guys. Do fans put too much stock into the bowl streak?
I don't know if fans do or not. I don't really talk to fans about bowl games. I dislike the whole bowl game thing, not the streak, but I hate the importance that bowl games take on, because they're a crapshoot. Some teams buy in, some don't. There's lots of coaches moving around.
Players opting out now.
The media makes decisions on where to rank teams the following year based in part on whether or not they won their bowl game. That's stupid. So I think that stuff is stupid. Now, to me, the one underlying thing about bowl games that still makes them something you want to do is the extra practice time.
If the players are bought in.
Even if they're not bought in, the extra practice time is good, and they are of value from that standpoint. Other than that, I don't care.
Yeah. I think during that period of decline that I was just talking about, Tech kept winning 10 games. They kept beating UVA, and they kept going to bowl games. So that blinded a lot of us, a lot of the fan base, even the coaches, into thinking, though, there was nothing wrong with the program, right? Well, let's face it, UVA was incompetent. At some point, they were going to hire a good football coach, right? And at some point, Clemson was going to start doing better than 7-5 and actually use all their resources.
At some point, Florida State was going to get over Bobby Bowden.
Exactly, right. So we did a lot of things well. Don't get me wrong, but our opponents were not doing things well. They were not operating at max efficiency, and we took advantage of that. And we used the ball streak, we used the UVA streak, we used the 10-win streak as an excuse not to do things to make ourselves better, whether that's fundraising, whether that's hiring better offensive coaches, whatever. That's why I call those things albatrosses, because they happen, so we use them as a crutch to say there's nothing wrong with us. Right. Sometimes I think for people to get shaken into reality, they need to get punched in the mouth. And so anybody holding on to the ball streak is proof that we don't need to make changes in the program. If it takes losing the ball streak to shake people awake and realize that some changes need to be made, not just with the head football coach, but in a lot of things in the way Virginia Tech operates, then by God, let's not go to one for once. Let's not let that thing weigh us down and be and hold us back from making key changes that this program needs.
Well, it's the old saying, good is the enemy of great.
Couple of comments. Yep. About the bowl. People are chiming in right now. Eric Fisher says the bowl streak is a big thing because right now we don't have a lot to hang our hat on at the moment. Hoagie for life. Bowl games are pointless. There's no reason for them. Andrew Syback, the bowl game only matters to fans to the extent that we aren't a yearly ACC champ contender, so it's better than nothing. Doesn't matter to me, though. Anthony Price points out the financial benefits to a bowl game. And Jonathan Larrick writes and says, amen, Chris, who asked the question to begin with. So there you go.
There's no financial benefits to a bowl game anymore because it used to be in the Big East day, whatever bowl you went to. Like if you went to an Alliance Bowl, the school, got the $7 million from that. Now, all ACC bowl money is put into a pot and split evenly amongst the team. So it doesn't matter whether Virginia Tech goes to the Sugar Bowl or they go to the Military Bowl. They're getting the same amount of money.
Yeah, so what they do is all the revenue is thrown into one pot, and then from that pot, the expenses of each of the teams are paid. Yeah. So there is no financial advantage to it.
There's no you can actually lose money on a bowl game this year or some years.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just don't see the benefits to them anymore. And let me point out here that Virginia Tech has the longest ball streak in the country, right? Which means they have a longer ball streak than Alabama, and they have a longer ball streak than Clemson, and they have a longer ball streak than Ohio State, right? So
you don't even need to keep talking.
So what in the heck does a ball streak actually mean?
Right.
That's why I love the comments on YouTube, because nothing I can prepare for quite gets the conversation going like this. So Thank you, everybody. What a really good crop of questions. And I wish we had more time. But we're coming up on 90 minutes. I joke with Will and Chris about this. We used to start the podcast about 40 minutes, 60 minutes, and then I'd always, hour 10, and now I'm like hour 20 is normal. Like an hour and a half is a long time.
I was going to stop you around the 2:40 mark because Tottenham plays at 3.
Yes. But, there you go. It's 2:27 right now. Who does Tottenham play?
Oh, they play Royal Antwerp for top of the Europa League group today.
Fantastic. Well, great podcast today. Looking forward to our podcast on Monday. We will be back. On Monday morning, episode 158 of the Tech Sideline Podcast, recapping the Commonwealth Clash between Virginia Tech and Virginia with the Cup on the line. Chris Coleman, what's the rest of the week look like? And if people want to follow along TSL during the game on Saturday, how can they do so?
Oh, gosh. We'll have the Q&A as normal tomorrow. Corey will have a running back article. I believe Corey is talking to
Who'd you say he's talking to?
Danny Cole about the 2011 game.
Yeah.
And that game
when both teams are ranked, right?
Oh, it was for the Coastal Division title, and Tech went up there and beat them 38-0. It was when Logan Thomas was just running over people like crazy. By the way, congratulations to Logan Thomas.
Yeah.
What a big day for him.
And I don't think a lot of fans got my tweet the other day. I tweeted, is Logan Thomas the best tight end in Virginia Tech history after he caught 9 passes for 198
yards?
Yeah, so it was a joke.
It was a joke.
But you know.
Anyway, big day for Logan Thomas, and he actually caught a pass over Terrell Edmonds, so that was kind of cool. And the Washington football team win over Pittsburgh.
Logan Thomas is 6'6", buddy, right?
He's not 6'7" like Bucky Hodge.
But he's 6'6".
I tweeted out the NFL put out a highlight YouTube highlight video of just Logan Thomas catches. So I tweeted it out. So go through my feed.
You are at Will Stewart TSL.
At Will Stewart TSL. At Chris Coleman TSL.
There you go. At Tech Sidelines, the home spot too on Twitter. Great podcast today. Looking forward to the game on Saturday night, 8 o'clock kick. ACC Network will have coverage on TechSideline.com and on our social media feeds. Will, Chris, any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
We have all of the furniture for the new office has been delivered and set up, so that's an ongoing process. I'm gonna put lighting in the furniture. I got to go purchase some chairs, get computers delivered and installed. So that's going to be happening throughout Christmas break and early next year.
I want to point out that we have absolutely no idea what's going to happen with the Justin Fuentes situation.
Right.
No clue what's going to happen next week, right? Signing day is next Wednesday. So I normally spend Monday and Tuesday before signing day writing up a signing day column about my thoughts on the class and everything like that. Well, what if I spend all day writing that article and then Fuente gets fired and none of those guys sign? So I don't even know what signing day coverage is going to look like.
We're going to be trailing the curve here.
Yeah, exactly. So be patient with us to a certain extent because we have no idea what's going to happen. We just got to wing it this year.
Right.
Monday will be a football-dedicated podcast. Basketball does not play again. Men's basketball Tuesday. Women's basketball, undefeated, opens up ACC play tonight against Pittsburgh. All right, that'll do it for us. Episode 157 of the Tech Sideline Podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the like and subscribe button before we sign off. For our managing editor, Chris Coleman, our founder and general manager, Will Stewart, he is the best podcast producer in the land, Malcolm Stewart. I'm your podcast host, Evan Hughes. Thanks so long. Thanks so much for watching and listening to episode 157 of the Tech Sideline Podcast. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the game, and we'll talk to you Monday.